Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 470. Great Apocalypse. Part 4. The moment the shelling began, I grabbed E.G. High. It felt as if the entire world had us in its crosshairs. Our ship quickly turned its heading. I could only pray that she wasn't too late. Fire. Kwaiowa. The ear-rending cacophony of cannon firing noises filled up the entire great ocean. Foams around us evaporated into steam. With almost no room left, the turtle dragon managed to turn around in time. Even then, we couldn't dodge everything. Hyansong SSI. As the acrid burning smell filled up our noses, the fable metal quickly branched out and covered up the entirety of the deck. Soon, it covered the entire hull and started glowing in white-hot heat. So hot, in fact, one's skin would be cooked instantly. As the impact force on the outer layer of the metal decreased, Hyansong undid the steel transformation. When we saw the sky again, we realized that our ship was falling to the bottom as if the ground beneath had disappeared. I quickly activated Demon King transformation, spread out my wings, and shouted out, "E.G. High." She hurriedly grabbed the helm and controlled the movement of the ship. Flames lit up below the hull and the turtle dragon began flying. Only after securing our balance were we able to take stock of our surroundings. Just what the hell happened here? And then, Kim Dokja couldn't close his slack jaw. A ship in the middle of the ocean suddenly fell to the ground, meaning the water supporting that ship had disappeared. Kugugugugu. The great ocean had been split in half and its deep, dark bottom was now fully exposed. Aquatic creatures were flapping around painfully down there, and we could see the horde of outer gods gleefully tearing into those helpless creatures. Gaiaha! The swarm of outer gods were running on the bottom of the ocean, their bodies wriggling like worms. From either side of the now dry ocean, the huge tsunami waves were flooding in. Move! Hurry! I shouted out, and E.G. High urgently turned the ship around again. Load the cannons. It was then that we heard the noises of cannons being loaded for the second time. Just hearing that true voice alone instilled fear deep into the very marrows of our bones. I raised my head and saw Hyansong sweating buckets as well. Even if it was the fable metal, it wouldn't be able to withstand attacks of such caliber too many times. Juicy. Do something. I was planning to act, anyway. I finished my crappy construction effort on the white flag of complete surrender, and raised it up high. Item, the white flag of complete surrender, is activating. Now your enemy should be able to spot your complete surrender from even afar. A portion of constellations are shocked by your action. A small number of constellations are pointing accusatory fingers at your cowardice. Cowardice, my foot. You haven't even bothered to show up here. I used all of my strength to wave this white flag around. E.G. High. Over here. I called out, yet no reply came back my way. No, the one to tackle me down figuratively was our own E.G. High, instead. Juicy, have you gone insane? It might not look it, but this item is an SSS grade. There's no guarantee of us surviving just because we surrendered, you know. Well, E.G. High on that side could be a kind girl. Let's believe in that. How can you crack jokes in this kind of situation? Unfortunately, I wasn't joking. The cannons finished reloading, and just as they began emitting light, I diligently waved my white flag and shouted out my prepared speech. "OIAA, E.G. High. Did your master teach you to attack the opponents waving white flags?" Kugu. And then, that side stopped moving for the first time ever. The fully loaded cannons had stopped just before they could fire. The thick, gray steam dissipated to reveal a lone figure standing on the deck. It was the outer god, the master of the sunken island. E.G. High, from the 999th turn, was standing there, her long hair dancing in the wind. Even though she had lived an unaccountable amount of time, her looks were still in the 20s. It was as if her time had frozen still in the moments of the 999th regression turn's conclusion. As if she wanted to count the emptiness of that time, her lips began parting slowly. Flag. That's right, this flag. You remember it? Old pages were flipping past within me. Scenes from the 999th turn were being replayed, the intense stench of blood, the eerie darkness of the subway. Exclusive skill, reading comprehension, is activating. Attribute, scenario interpreter, is activating. Your words have awoken the ancient fable within your opponent. Within that darkness stood Yu Hyuk. Sparks burst out from the shattered, broken headlights of the train, the light flickering intermittently illuminated Yu Hyuk's sword slaughtering the monsters. On that day, the wounded sword demon met the conquering King. The sword demon shuddered after seeing his sword easily rip through the enemy she had so much trouble fighting until then. E.G. Hai shouted out, her eyes chasing after the sword's trajectory that seemed to disappear in pure disinterest. If I follow after you, can I become stronger, too? Then, will I be able to survive in this stinking world? Su-cha-cha-cha-chit. Sparks danced violently before my eyes. The vicious storm of probabilities aftermath was so powerful that I couldn't even see my front properly. The incoming aquatic creatures and outer gods targeting us got sucked into the sparks and writhed in pain. What's this? What's this? What's this? What's this? Outer gods turned to look at their king. However, their king was no longer standing there. As if she was lost within the distant memories, the 999th turn's E.G. Hai was reaching out towards the empty air. Moss, as I thought. I got this impression the first time I met the secretive plotter as well as 999th turn's Uriel, that these people, they were clearly out of their minds. Character, Master of the Sunken Island, is painfully baring her teeth. When an existence became an outer god, normally, this being would end up as a completely different existence. It'd lose the memories of the life it lived and be reborn as a brand new creature. However, that was the story reserved for the regular outer gods, kings, played by different rules. They retained the memories and emotions of their previous lives. The secretive plotter divided his fable into different regression turns and stored them that way, while the living flame shoved her own sense of self into her vengeful obsession. In that case, what was it like for the Master of the Sunken Island? Was she able to remember who she used to be? E.G. Hai. Please remember who you once were. I wasn't sure why the 999th turn's E.G. Hai became an outer god. However, I could think of one possibility. Don't destroy this world line, please. This place is the same as the world you used to live in. Yu Hyuk is here, so is E Hyeonsong, and so are you, E.G. Hai. Su-cha-cha-cha-chit. Starstream is closely observing your actions. A portion of great Dakibis are frowning at your actions. Fables from the 999th turn began flowing in front of my eyes. Don't close your eyes. Make sure you see who you're about to kill. Don't close your eyes. Make sure to remember who your sword is about to kill. Yu Hyuk, as how the 999th turn's E.G. Hai remembered him, stood there, the man who taught her the ways of the sword and how to survive. The struggle for the flag began, and after taking over the Chunmuro station, he said this to her. Remember the deaths of those you've killed. This might hurt you, but that way, you'll avoid becoming a sword demon. Yu Hyuk's flag, still white and untainted, slowly wavered in that place. It had become red, then black, later. E.G. Hai looked at the flag proudly gleaming on that man's back and thought to herself. I wish to become someone like him. That was something I also thought about often. Character, Master of the Sunken Island's fable, is violently shaking. I didn't miss this opening and continued to fire my salvo like a machine gun. I spat out the events of the 999th turn that I remembered without a shred of hesitation. Have you forgotten everything that Yu Hyuk taught you back then? Let the ones surrendering early go. Those who scheme behind your back are usually the smart ones. We're short on manpower, so we need to utilize even such people, too. E.G. Hai's jaw fell as she watched me from the side. She must have had no clue that I'd come out and persuade our enemy in this manner. Didn't really matter if they slagged me off for being a coward, as I simply had no choice. I had to resort to stimulating the memories from the original novel, since buying time was the utmost priority for us. I didn't have any guarantee that this method would work, anyway. Fire. God damn it, so that little wasn't enough, huh? Quia. The second shelling commenced. Although the firepower this time was weaker, the destructive power behind the attack was still too much for us to meet it head-on. The only saving grace was that, rather than one big shot, the attack was in the form of scattered rounds, instead. I watched the shells cross the vast ocean and bit my lips, hard. Hyansong SSI. I'm not finished with my preparations. Was it because he had to lend the fable metal to our companions, too? Hyansong's magical energy recovery rate was extremely slow. The forged steel covering the vessel was only about half compared to before. Meaning, we need to withstand this turn without the help from the steel transformation. The turtle dragon began retreating with every ounce of energy in order to dodge the scattered shells. However, Jihai moved in contrast to the ship's direction and stood in front to protect both Hyansong and me. Ajussies, stand behind me. I'll do whatever I can about this. Her unexpected words made me take another look at her. With an unfamiliar light in her eyes, she was studying the front line. This fight. It's my fight. I didn't know what made her move, but one thing's for certain, Jihai had chosen her battlefield. I don't know what the hell this 999th turn is, nor what happened in that place. However, if there is another me trying to destroy this world with the pretext of tragedy from another regression turn, ghostly flames burned fiercely within her eyes after she had made up her mind. I will never forgive another me. Constellation, maritime war god, is unleashing his status. I quietly stared at her. The oceans were the most optimal battlefield for her. The only things I could trust right now were Jihai and her battleship. Nebula, Kim Dokja Company's probability is permeating within the incarnation, Jihai. The great fables I possessed poured in all of their status into her. Blinding golden aura enveloped her body. She opened her eyes wide, before smiling refreshingly at me. Thanks, Ajusi. Jihai's battleship dashed forward. The turtle dragon evaded the arcs of the incoming scattered shells and spat out flames from its figurehead. All troops, advance. Great fable, torch that swallowed the myth, has begun talking a big game. The flames spat out by the small dragon figurehead collided with the shell fired from the other side and evaporated. The history we lived together became the fable and was colliding against the 999th turn's fable. Great fable, Demon World Spring, is aiding the incarnation Jihai. Great fable, Season of Light and Darkness, has begun its storytelling. If one looked at the destructive power of great fables alone, then our side shouldn't get pushed around by your run-of-the-mill nebulas. Constellation, maritime war god, has ceded his command to his incarnation. Character Jihai is activating Ghost Fleet LV. Her speciality, the Ghost Fleet, finally revealed themselves above the great ocean's waters. Each of these vessels had grown past the size of a cruiser and were now almost reaching that of an aircraft carrier. They escorted the turtle dragon and spat out flames in sync with each other. Load the cannons. Jihai's Ghost Fleet started their speedy forward march. Unfortunately, that side started firing first. Waves of flames rushed in over the vast expanse of the ocean. The fleet headed straight into the wave. The gigantic wall of water blocked our front, but her eyes were focused only on a single point. Fire. The concentrated firing caused one side of the wave to explode. The fleet dug into that small opening and continued to advance. Her fleet, now in the straight line formation, then opened fire in all directions. Outer gods struck down by the cannons, cried out in pain. Jihai trampled on those screams and continued to advance forward again and again. She even vomited out blood after using an excessive amount of magical energy, yet she never let go of the helm. Even if it's just one shot. Jihai's eyes emitting chilling glow were still fixed on one point. On a certain battleship waiting beyond the thick wall of waves. Load the cannons. Load the cannons. Constellation, bald general of justice, is cheering on the incarnation, e.g. Hai. Constellation, King Hungmu, is cheering on the incarnation, e.g. Hai. Constellation, Josian's first sorcerer, is cheering on the incarnation, e.g. Hai. Constellation, last hero of Wangsanbeil, is cheering on the incarnation, e.g. Hai. Constellation, one-eyed Mithraea, is cheering on the incarnation, e.g. Hai. Constellation, COAE single stroke of brush, is cheering on the incarnation, e.g. Hai. The Korean peninsula's constellations were now looking at her. While watching her pierce her way through this overwhelmingly disadvantageous combat situation, I began recalling a certain page from the now ancient original novel. Character E.G. Hai's attribute evolution is imminent. Her final attribute evolution, something she also experienced during the original, was about to occur right before my eyes. Such a thing was possible only because of the current situation. The probabilities lent to her by the Korean peninsula's constellations, her own fable that she had accumulated with abnormal speed, and finally, E.G. Hai's determination to even risk death all combined to create this miracle. Constellation, maritime war god, is looking at his incarnation. From the distant skies, E.G. Hai's sponsor, the maritime war god, was looking down at her. He was the constellation that protected and advised her for the longest time. I knew what he was thinking right now, I could sense it, because I was also a star like him. He was currently experiencing an event that only the smallest number of constellations would ever encounter. The event of an incarnation exceeding the status of her sponsor. This should be what the maritime war god must have realized, that the time had come for him to acknowledge the truth, that now was the time to let go of his own incarnation from his embrace. And so, the oceans desired one monarch to rule over the violent storms. The maritime war god recited the fable as if he was sending the congratulatory message to a young bird taking to the skies for the first time. Therefore, there is no need for two monarchs in this great ocean. Character E.G. Hai's attribute is evolving. Character E.G. Hai has acquired the legendary great attribute. Finally, the wounded sword demon was advancing towards her own ocean. Character E.G. Hai's attribute has evolved to the monarch of the great sea. Fire. Fire. As the ear-deafening cannon firing resounded out, everything before our eyes was enveloped by the blinding flash of light. Chapter 471. Great Apocalypse. Part 5. Mari, Time War. God. The 999th turn's E.G. Hai showed some reaction as if she had finally remembered her sponsor. During the 999th regression turn, the maritime war god sacrificed himself to save E.G. Hai. Perhaps to deny everything that happened during this turn, the powerful naval bombardment continued on. However, our own E.G. Hai also responded in kind. All of the Korean peninsula's constellations were with E.G. Hai. The monarch of the Great Sea, the realm E.G. Hai reached only during the extreme latter part of the ways of survival, well past the 1800th regression turns. She reached the highest position that a human could ever reach and leapfrogged her own sponsor to eventually become a god of the oceans. At least when on water, she was confident of not being pushed around by any myth-grade constellations. She actually said those words, and they even became reality later. Too, during the original storyline, she fought the myth-grade constellation Poseidon on an equal footing, at least when they were on the sea. Fire. Attribute, Monarch of the Great Seas effects are activating. The storm whipped up from behind E.G. Hai. Waves split up and firestorm raged on the path she scythed through. It was as if these violent winds were trying to escort her ship. She stood at the forefront of these winds and carried on with the shelling. Exclusive skill, Ghost Fleet LV, is continuing to fight back. And then, the giant wall of waves gradually split up. MONARCH of the GRE at sea. 2222222. Even the outer gods following that side looked to be flustered now. The monarch of the Great Sea will never be defeated on water. That was the accepted rule within the ways of survival. I believed in those words, and that allowed us to come this far. However, cook. Along with pushushuk, noise, streams of blood shot out from Ijihai's nose and mouth. Her excessively boiling magical energy had begun flowing backwards. Not only that. Attribute, Monarch of the Great Seas effects are activating. That message wasn't caused by the status from our side. I thought something was rushing in at us, and in the blink of an eye, powerful headwinds completely flipped our vision. The Ghost Fleet and Turtle Dragon were sucked into the humongous wave and flailed about within the rising foams. Jihaya. Ijihai was flung away like a kite with its strings cut. I reached out and grasped her wrist. My magical energy helped her to regain her consciousness, and she somersaulted in the air before landing back on the deck. She gritted her teeth and while grabbing the helm, shouted out. I told you to run away. I can't do that. For the current Ijihai alone, this was asking for too much. Even if she had become the monarch of the Great Sea, our opponent had already attained the status of that very title a long time ago and now was even an outer god, as well. Suchachachuchit. Due to the blessings from the Great Apocalypse scenario, this calamity had exceeded even the myth-grade constellations. That was precisely who we were confronting right now. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, is crying out as if in pain. Great Fable, Torch that swallowed the myth, is resisting against the myth. Great Fable, Season of Light and Darkness, is revealing itself. 3 great fables began telling their stories at the same time. Since a portion of the Great Fables shares was being used by the first team, we couldn't utilize their full powers here. However, we still had enough to provoke our opponent. You are. Was my goal of using the white flag to stimulate her memories finally paying off? Certain aspects of emotions carried within her true voice were different from before. Suchachachuchit. Character, Master of the Sunken Island, is staring at the Great Fable. Disconnected film theory is activating. Finally, the moments I was waiting for had come. Fables built up by 2 different Ijihais collided and the disconnected film threads began connecting to each other. If everything goes well, we should be able to buy ourselves a bit of time through this phenomenon. It was then that the scenery before us suddenly changed. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, has begun its storytelling. This is the fable of Dokja, only son. Please survive. Ajusi. Don't. Stop it. I said, stop. These were the memories from when we fought off the indescribable distance for the first time. As if simply recalling them was too painful for her, Ijihai quickly averted her gaze. Ah, so she made such an expression back then. I too could vividly recall those memories. In order to transport the entirety of the industrial complex, I made a deal with the secretive plotter and fought against that calamity. You are. However, the expression of the 999th turns Ijihai was crumpling as well. Another fable unfolded itself before our eyes next. Great Fable, Wanderer of the Eternal Horizon, has begun its storytelling. That was the fable belonging to the 999th turns Ijihai. The scenery of Seoul, destroyed by nebulous sneak attacking it, appeared before us. Next up was the unconscious companions, and finally, the crumbling outer wall of the castle. On top of this wall, the one-eyed Yonghyuk and his lone arm were staring at the battlefield. This is the only way. The jet-black aura of chaos began rising up from his figure. Master. Stop. I said, stop. I knew exactly which scene this was. This was where 999th turns Yonghyuk died. His soul, now in tatters after the outer world pledge he signed with the outer god was repeatedly invoked, was making his very last trade. Soul was now sinking into the deepest bowels of the ocean. Yonghyuk spoke. You must survive. And then, the 999th turn's memories were scattering away beyond the misty, gray foams. From the 2 eyes of the expression girl, the master of the sunken island, something began trickling down. Certain fables wouldn't disappear even when subjected to the untold amount of time. Such a fable made her come this far. A juicy, isn't that? I looked to my side and saw Regi also crying. Isn't it too similar? Two great fables are responding to each other. Of course, the stories had to be similar. Kim Dokja believed that the most perfect regression turn was the 999th. And I took that turn as my motif, after all. That regression turn was the closest out of all the others that came close to the correct conclusion. It was the only regression turn where everyone survived and got to witness the conclusion. Su-chut-chut-chut. As the storm of aftermath raged on, the 999th turn Zhi was approaching us. The distance closed in with each step taken. I was getting a bad vibe from this. A juicy, hurry and fall back. Regi also sensed the incoming danger and unsheathed the twin dragon sword before dashing forward. The instant kill, it was the best anti-human combat skill she possessed. Unfortunately, the streak of sword light slicing forward was deflected away in the empty air as the harsh, screeching noise resounded out. And Regi was flung away across the deck, arcs of her blood scattering about. Jihaya. Ihian Song on standby quickly caught her. Just as I sighed in relief, the 999th turn Zhi stopped right before my nose. Even before I could unshackle my fable and unleash my status, her pale yet strong right hand grabbed hold of my collars. You. Who are you? Yup, like master, like disciple. I could only smile wryly. In any case, the fact that we could now converse wasn't such a bad development. My name is Kim Dokja. Your master's best friend. Best friend? The 999th turn Zhi now formed a confused expression. She then began staring at the fable circling around me. Before you start fighting them, you must search the left side wall. Then, you'll immediately realize what I'm trying to say to you. I'm telling you this now so that you can fight against the Sasquatch during the 28th scenario. My fable was now left wide open for her to read. But, how did you? I'm Yu Young Hyok. Master? She must have been beset with confusion, as she used her left hand to massage her temples. Her eyes were burning with ominous aura. Kudu-doo-doo. Her grip on my collars was getting stronger. Ripples of her status tightened around my body and I began having trouble breathing. Hang on second. Why don't you let me go in? Master. Outer gods flooding in parroted her words. With the most sorrowful language known to man, they cried out instead of the 999th turn Zhi. They sounded as if their vocal cords were tearing apart, as if their whole existence was crumbling away. Exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, is activating. All of your fables are sympathizing with the applicable individual. Your degree of understanding on the applicable individual is increasing rapidly. Her eyes now reflected the moments we had lived in the past. From the Demon King selection battle, to Gigantomachia, from the Great War of Saints and Demons to the journey to the West. And then, Fable, Square Circle, has begun its storytelling. You can talk to me anytime. If you don't want to talk to me, then it'll be fine with someone else, too. But you don't have to huddle in a corner and let it fester inside you. I now could see the face of the 999th turn Zhi distorting in great sorrow. Why did that remind me of the secretive plotter? Why is it not me, but you? To the 999th turn Zhi, the master of the sunken island, what did this story mean to her? Would she also hate me? To the lives of this world line, built upon the history of her and her companions that I read. I'm envious. What? Su-chut-chut-chut. As if she was looking at something she had been longing for all eternity, the 999th turn Zhi slowly reached out and placed her palm on my cheek. Even if it was the same story, the impression one got after reading it would be different from people to people. Some might despair after seeing the story he had failed to achieve, while someone else might feel consoled having seen the sorrow that closely resembled hers. The only issue here would be with where that consolation effort might go next. I want to have it. Her eyes, soaked in ancient sorrow, suddenly were filled with streaks of madness. The 999th turns E.G. High slowly turned her head. Her gaze was now locked firmly on the unconscious E.G. High. I too want to live this kind of life. Only then did I realize what this girl was thinking of in her head. The disconnected film theory was writhing violently. The 999th turns E.G. High reached out, and the vicious air current flew out to envelop our unconscious E.G. High. This was dangerous. The fables of two beings are starting to resonate. Accompanied by the eugeogeek noise, the 999th turns fable began moving. That fable was now devouring the fable from our world line. I freaked out and hurriedly unleashed my status. I needed to stop this. No matter what, I must never let the 999th turns E.G. High devour. Quad-do-do-do. Forged steel broke out from the ship's deck and extended in the blink to protect both me and our E.G. High. It was E. Hyansung's doing. However, I sensed that something was different about the fable's aura coming from the steel barrier. I shifted my gaze towards him. E. Hyansung was there, but it was not him. Someone had borrowed his body to unleash his powers. Incarnation E. Hyansung's sponsor is protecting you. This status was strong enough to evenly match the master of the sunken island. The steel wall was ripped apart with loud tearing noises, and the 999th turns E.G. High poked her head through. As if she had been doused by cold water, her expression was hardened to a frightening degree. The first one to open his lips was E. Hyansung's sponsor. Jihaya. Our story had come to an end a long time ago already. That was the true voice of an outer god. And I realized whose it was instantly. Asterisk. At the same time, Han Myano, having purchased another X-grade Ferragini with coins he borrowed from Kim Dokja, was hurriedly driving on the dimensional road. His destination was the sealed-off Isle of Reincarnators. Dariama. If you can hear my voice, please answer me. Dariama. Han Dariam, that was the name he had given to his daughter. He continued to wander around all corners of the dark stratum and called out that name. Dariama. And eventually, he discovered a familiar hand poking out from in between the distorted darkness. He couldn't not recognize that hand. He had never let go of that hand, right up until she was snatched away by the Demon King. Han Myano held it tightly. And then, he began extracting his daughter's body from the layers of darkness. It wasn't an easy job, but he couldn't give up on it. Great Fable, Liberator of the Forgotten Ones, has begun its storytelling. The Kim Dokja Company's fable he borrowed in order to find his daughter began to tell its story. And he managed to extract her body bit by bit from the layer. Fortunately, her incarnation body was intact. Not so fortunately, though, her heart wasn't beating. However, he had in his possession a single, life and death pill, he got from Isiolwa. Dariama. Please wake up. It's your dad. Your dad's here for you. Han Myano called out while crying. And so, how long passed by like this? Finally, Han Dariam opened her eyes. Reddish light leaked out from her irises, however. You did well, my dependent. What opened its eyes wasn't Han Dariam. The guidance of the end almost came to an end itself during the great war of saints and demons. The ominous status of a demon king could be felt now. Asmodeus formed a crazed smile, causing Han Myano to fall on his butt. Give my daughter back to me. My daughter. Daughter? My apologies, but that will be too difficult. I definitely need this incarnation body, you see. However, allow me to gift you with a nice present, instead. Asmodeus spoke up to there and pulled out a pitch-black eye patch from its inner pocket. The qualification to watch the end of this world line with me, that is. This was an ancient item that had been passed down among the guiders of the end. An item that could be used only when the final scenario was just around the corner. Item, Relic of the Abyss, is activating. The otherworld incantation meant to summon the outer god died in the abyss, the demon of 999. Asmodeus exploded in a fit of maniacal laughter as it watched the dimension distort visibly. Metatron. Agar's. Demon King of Salvation. This story won't end the way you think it will. This story, it will dash. What the hell is this? Since when did this happen? There was a man standing behind Asmodeus. He was enveloped in the jet-black aura, while bandages were wrapped around in one of his arms. Han Myongo, watching this scene unfold 5-6 steps away, began trembling uncontrollably. He recognized the face of this unknown man. This mysterious man met his gaze and smiled. "Oh, so you have summoned me? What's this? There's a demon king here, too? Aha, I get it. This demon king was busy bullying you, and you summoned me to save you, right? Oh, the end. That's not true. It is I, Asmodeus, that have summoned you to Swish." The man's translucent hand reached out and grabbed the back of Asmodeus's neck. And a second later, the demon king's soul form was captured by the man. Hiohik. I don't trust the words of those hiding in other people's bodies. Asmodeus's soul was then torn to shreds along with the loud puwahak noise. The attack didn't even give the demon king a chance to resist. The man licked the tattered fable of a demon and grinned brightly. I hate demon kings the most. They always try to imitate me. I mean, look. This bastard, he even had the eye patch that I misplaced somewhere, you know? The man muttered to himself and pulled the eye patch off Asmodeus's former incarnation body before putting it on himself. He grinned brightly as if he was satisfied by his own appearance now. Meanwhile, the trembling Han Myongo hurriedly hugged the fallen body of his daughter and looked up at this man. Oh, don't worry, man. I may look a bit scary, but once you get to know me better, you'll learn that I'm actually a nice guy inside. The man vigorously tapped on his bandages and spoke up. Well, then. Shall I go and find my Jihai now?